Hi guys, welcome back to the Social Tune, and today we are taking a look at the latest self-titled album by Arca. So if you're a fan of electronic music that will never get played on the radio, you've probably heard of Arca. This is a Venezuelan artist who has previously released 2 studio albums, Xen and Mutant, both of which are critical darlings. Seriously, this is the kind of artist who would make most Pitchfork fans cream themselves. And so, it's no surprise that pretty much all of them have gushed, in more ways than one, over all of this guy's music. And boy oh boy do I not get it. I definitely think it's good, but see, there's a subsection of music that gets praised purely for being different, for being as far away from the mainstream and conventional music that you can get. And Arca's approach to electronic music is very weird indeed, extremely disjointed and often lacking in melody. Now with all of that said, I don't dislike it per se. It's just that this is the kind of music that you could easily hear from so many more musicians who just bring more to the table, like Jolin, whose song Guantanamo I have frequently praised as being one of the most powerful pieces of music of the past 10 years. But that song was abrasive and cut very deep, striking fear and panic into the listener, while a lot of Arca's music has just not been able to grip me on that emotional level. But in the lead up to this new album, there were some promising signs. For one thing, under the guidance of the legendary singer-songwriter Björk, who Arca has produced for in the past, this was to be the first time that Arca would be singing on one of his studio releases. And on top of that, he was doing so in his own language, Spanish, which would definitely make for a very unique experience. So I decided to give the guy another chance by diving into his new album in detail. And you know what? While I won't call it great, this is my favorite Arca release to date. Sure, it still has some real issues, but overall, it still managed to do more for me than either of his past releases. So let's get the most bizarre part out of the way first, Arca's singing voice. Now, part of the appeal of an Arca album is that a lot of the changes in direction within the production almost sound in the moment or on a whim. This is why adding vocals could seriously backfire, as it automatically gives the songs a lot more structure, especially when Arca goes for the verse-chorus pattern on a number of songs here like Anoche, Desafio, and Fugaces, or his constant repetition, which is kind of impressive considering that he apparently insisted on ad-libbing the lyrics on most of these songs. We'll get to why that has somewhat mixed results later on, but in the meantime, let's focus purely on his voice. And I have to admit, I'm not a huge fan. He's not bad, but his vocals do occasionally crack, and his voice is made to sound very breathy a lot of the time. It's especially funny on Coraje, where it may be a song that he's dumping someone, but that high-pitched caterwauling that he does around the middle of the track is just hilarious to me. Especially when he follows it up with his normal deeper tones, as if I'm going to forget what just happened. Now with that said, it's still distinct, and compared to other electronic artists who have stepped in front of the microphone, like Calvin Harris or Andrew Taggart, I'll take Arca any day of the week. But the thing is, when you're ad-libbing everything you're saying on an album, your voice is bound to falter and slip up from time to time. Now with that said, his voice does blend well with the instrumentation, and overall, I'm going to support his choice to sing here, as it definitely does give his songs a more steady and melodic foundation, which is certainly not a bad thing, at least not for me. However, it can detract a little from the lyrics.
No advertencia esta vez
On any album where I hear that the lyrics were improvised, I get pretty skeptical, and for good reason. Not only can it feel lazy or pretentious or both, but you're also bound to fall into patterns and otherwise not deliver your best material. And while his voice and word choices are definitely nice, when you translate them, it can occasionally come across as a little clumsy. The main theme of this album seems to be about relationships, particularly the sexual side of them. Anoche, for example, seems to be about the awakening of love from sex. How a relationship can start out as purely physical, with emotion coming in later on. Or take Desafio, which has some pretty explicit lyrics, including I pour out my love, I give you my heat, penetrate me, and I feel you inside. Damn, Arca. And Reverie appears to be about a breakup, as it swells and cascades, contorts and warps, with a great final crescendo that I really wish there were more of across this album. It's almost enough to render the vocals completely unnecessary, which is later followed up on Sin Rumbo, where he's stewing in his misery. And I'd find it all a lot more compelling if the language were a little more complicated. Sure, the fact that he's singing in Spanish makes the song sound naturally sexy to non-native speakers, but if you actually take the trouble to translate these lyrics, the language is pretty straightforward and blunt, which I suppose isn't a bad thing, as it does make it more relatable and intimate. Hell, it's a good thing on Desafio, you need a song like that to be blunt and to the point. And there definitely is some good writing here, especially in the way he confronts the breakup head-on, refusing to stew in his misery anymore on Fugaces. Or on Miel, which translates to honey, which is a straight-up song about cunnilingus. But I will say that the verse-chorus pattern on some of these songs does kinda clash with the free-flowing nature of the production. However, that's not to say that the production isn't good. Now, while this may be a very intimate album, like his previous releases, it has a very foreboding sound. I first heard this walking home at night, and it really did set me on edge in the best possible way. And on songs like the spacious, warping Fugaces, or the steady, atmospheric Miel, the intimacy is definitely present. Even though I did feel that the latter could afford a little bit more bombast, it is a song about eating someone out after all. Hell, the catchiest song here was Desafio, with some fantastic swell and some great harmonization. Especially for a song about sex, you'd expect that harmony to be in it. And while the vocal switch up on Coraje is still ridiculous, the lush production really does make up for it. But one of the best songs here is easily Whip, which samples the sound of an actual whip and then makes it so distorted, dissonant, and alien that I just loved it. Too bad it's not even a minute and a half long, but I enjoyed it while it lasted. However, some of these songs just do not work. Castration is fine, I guess, but it doesn't really add anything to the album. It's not as alien or as dissonant as some of the other tracks here, like Urchin. Sin Rumbo is just painfully generic to me, and while I do definitely give props to the effort that was put into Reverie, it also doesn't pull any emotion from me, as nothing really stands out about the production other than the fact that it's weird. Honestly, my biggest issue with a lot of this album compared to his last two is that there really is a lack of crescendos or progression across a lot of these songs. And on top of that, with how intimate Arca clearly wants this to be, you'd think that he'd strip away that film of distortion separating him from his audience, or at least place his vocals right at the front of the mix. This would have made him a lot more vulnerable, and I get the feeling that Arca knew that and isn't quite ready to open himself up in that way yet. Which is a shame, because had he done that, I would have probably loved this album. And I honestly never thought that Arca would even come close to doing that for me. But yeah, in my opinion, this is a big step in the right direction for Arca, getting a light 7 out of 10 from me. If you like off-the-wall electronic music, well, you'd probably prefer his last couple of albums, and I completely understand that. But otherwise, if you like a bit more structure and intimacy while still maintaining that feeling of improvisation, I'd recommend you check this out. You might find something that really resonates with you. So, thank you guys for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed. If there are any other albums coming out in the next month or so, please post them in the comments or tweet them at me at the Social Tune, link in the description. Please subscribe so you don't miss a thing, and until the next time, I'm Finn, and this is the Social Tune signing off.